So first and foremost, thank you so much everyone for joining us again on the second day of our Y52 event. We really appreciate all of you coming in at this particular time and for you guys to be here with us. So we really appreciate that, and we hope that today we will gain some really good insights and perspectives, and you come with an appetite to hear the interesting dialogues and conversations that we're going to have for the rest of this session. All right. So, first off, I just want to welcome you guys. So, just want to give you guys a little bit of our perspective on what the whole workshop series is about. So this is all part of our Y52 workshop series, which is organized by Leaderonomics Youth, which is us, as well as Necole. Now, because here at Leaderonomics Youth, right, which is the team and the department that I'm from in Leaderonomics, right, ultimately, right, we really believe that development and leadership, right, it's a continuous process. We sort of akin it to a journey of sorts. Instead of the goal or the destination per se, it's more of the what takes you there. What are the journeys, the challenges, the tribulations and trials that lead you in order to reach that particular in order to develop yourself across your life. you know and I've been working with youths for quite a long time, and through dealing with them, right, one of the things that we realize, right, one of the things that we come to understand is that in accordance to our company's science of building leaders, which is a framework we use to actually develop our leadership programs. We base it on this particular framework over here. So in this framework, right, it's basically at different blocks, different parts of their life, right? Whether it's their younger years, their when they're in the teens, when they're tweens, or whether they're in their youth age, right? At different points in their life, right, there should be intentional learning blocks, right, that will help them build up certain competencies. And we found that if you were developing certain particular competencies at particular time blocks, right, it really really helps and aids and helps in their development progress, because at particular time blocks in time, that is when they as a individual are most conducive to learn those particular traits and competency. Not to say that when they grow older they cannot learn it. It's just that there are conducive time periods that they can learn these particular traits and competencies. And that's why if you look at the three sessions we have today, right, these are part of the competencies that we aim to help youths and as part of our program. So before we dive into today's topic, which today's topic is on curiosity, right? We hope that you guys had an interesting session yesterday when we tackled bonding, especially in bonding with your kids. And the reason why I want to say this is also because it's very important we know why we are doing this 3-day event. Like, why are we doing a Y52 event? Why are we targeting things like connectedness, curiosity, creativity? Why are we specifically targeting these things? So I think it's very important we understand the why first. So I think one of the main key points that I want to mention here is that the first of all, right, the world, as you know, is changing so fast. Regardless of whether it was COVID or not COVID, right, it is changing at a rapid pace. The time of when my parents were around, right, you look at it now, right, they say it's almost unrecognizable. So many things, so many things are changing all the time. And for our kids, right, for the children, right, they really need to constantly develop, learn and unlearn things throughout their entire life. So, competencies that we are mentioning, such as the bonding, curiosity, and creativity, right? These are just a few examples of areas which are very, very important to not just them as a person, right? But to give them, when they go out into their daily life right now, right? It is, if they have these certain competency, they have learned it, they have experienced it, right? It gives them exposure and experience, right, to help them build themselves up and prepare themselves for the future that they're going to go in. you know because if they don't have this kind of exposure, they don't have this kind of learning experiences, right, ultimately, like imagine when you're leaving, imagine when they leave the nest, right? What sort of skills do they have? Are they equipped enough? Are they confident enough? Do they have are they developed enough in order to face the world as it is now? We all as adults, we can see how the world is. It's not exactly black and white all the time, and it's very rough. I would say it's very rough, and you know, a lot of times it's unpredictable, and I think we all experience that. We can empathize with this kind of things, right? So it's very important that the children, they are able to build up this level of competencies as well as develop. It gives them a better chance at succeeding and striving in the world, you know. So we hope that for the next 3 days, right, for today and tomorrow especially, right, it helps you gain a little bit more of understanding and insights into what kind of areas, besides just these three areas, what kind of areas that can help, that your kids might need to develop further in, right? And you know what kind of how better to prepare them for when they leave the nest. So that's what we aim to come out of these 3 days lah. That's our main purpose, and that's where our heart lies lah. We really want the kids to be future leaders of Malaysia and as well as the world in other countries, and equipped enough to do so. And because our hope in the future is with them. So that is one of our main missions here at Leaderamic Institute lah, just to share with you guys a little bit on the context of the Y52 event that you guys have signed up for. All right. So now, without further ado, I'm going to move us into our next segment, which we are going to talk about the theme of today, which is nurturing the habit of curiosity. So we'll go into the first segment, which is going to be a roundtable discussion session between two very, very amazing people. And the topic today, as you know, is going to be how to nurture the habit of curiosity. So I'd just like to introduce our panelists before I go into some of the rules of the roundtable. So right here we have with us our very own. You might have, you definitely have. If you were in yesterday, you would have seen him. I would just like to give a round of applause to our very own Michael Herrera. All right, Michael, you're in the chat. You can give us a wave. All right. Okay, so just to tell you a little bit about Michael, right? So when we talk about Michael, now Michael is actually he has 25 years of experience in branding, marketing, and setting up companies. Not only does he have a vast experience in the creative industry, besides being a celebrity fashion designer and serial entrepreneur, and is also a youth activist with a passion to develop the youths of today, and has with his array of experiences throughout his life. So all of his years of 25 years of experience in the creative industry, consulting in programs such as this, it is really his heart's work in order to help youths develop themselves further. And he hopes that he will be able to share with you guys some very interesting ideas, a different perception and different perspective on certain matters as well. So thanks for being here with us. Thanks for being with us here today, Michael. So our next panelist that we have is actually our very own, from our very own Leaderonomics, right? We have with us Eva. So Eva, can you give us a wave in the chat? All right, thanks for being with us here, Eva. So Eva is actually helming the research and development department here at Leaderonomics. Not only does she strive to research how people, top experts, executives, C-level execs, and world leaders, right, and their actions, their life events, and how how can this research contribute towards leadership development. And she works very intently on crafting pathways early on in the childhood of children to build the right foundations and assist children, youths, and fresh grads in their leadership capacity. She is also a mother to two bundles of joy, which we have seen in our company as well. So that is Eva. So Eva, I'm glad that you and Michael were able to be with us here today, and we hope for a very fruitful session to hear from you guys. If you have any questions, please, we really, really encourage questions. If you have any questions, please do put them in the chat. And later on in the day, after the roundtable has concluded, I will direct the questions that you have to Michael and Eva, which they can answer in their own time after that. All right, so do keep the questions coming in the chat. We will come to that after this. Eva, I think I will pass over the floor to you. Over to you.
Thanks, Darren. Thanks everyone for coming out. I'm sure it's been a long day, tiring, and if you're managing kids as well at home, I can relate to that. It's I'm sure it's tough times that we're living in. But thanks for coming out. And I think when we were thinking about the different topics that we wanted to cover today, like what Darren mentioned earlier, we were talking with Michael as well, and given his background, he's in an industry that he has to be creative. He has to think out of the box, and so we thought that this would be a really good topic for him to share with us on how this has helped him over his time. And of course, curiosity sits straight in that, and it's sort of the precursor of whatever it is that you need to think out of the box. But aside from creative industry and creative lines of work, I'm sure you all agree that the sort of challenges that we're facing as a society today, it kind of forces us to think very creatively in coming up with solutions. So hopefully, whether your child is looking into getting into a creative line or a creative line in the sense of being more artistic and all that, or whether it's a more traditional line, creative thinking is definitely an area that we need to look into. And curiosity, especially, we've spoken to a lot of leaders over the years, a lot of people from organizations, and we found that curiosity is one of those qualities that everyone seems to complain in this day and age that people are lacking in the working world. And it's kind of strange if you really think about it, because it should be very intuitive. It should be something that we all grow up with. And as a small child, if you go back to when your child was 2 or 3, you would have remembered all those why questions that they kept asking all the time, and you get really frustrated and you can't take it anymore. But you sort of keep encouraging them anyway, because that's a good thing. Somewhere along the line, it sort of disappears, or it kind of gets a little bit subdued. So what is it that we can do as parents to sort of nurture that even during teenage years and later on in life as well? And Michael, thanks for joining us again today, all the way from Turkey today, right?
Today, yes, Turkey.
Yeah, so thanks for that. Thanks for coming in. And you shared yesterday on your journey about your experiences, what you've done over the years, and also how your relationship with your mom, like her slight encouragement to sort of get you started on that competition and everything. So I'd be happy to hear more about how you feel about curiosity and how we develop this a little bit more in our children as parents, in our teenagers. So how would you define curiosity from your side, Michael?
I think curiosity is just to remain open, and I think you said it best when you said curiosity is intuitive. I think when we're very young, when we're born, all we want to do is taste, touch, and see everything. Because of our senses, we want to fill up our senses and learn about everything. So I think it's very intuitive for human beings to be inquisitive. It's just society and our environment that kind of changes that over time. So it's very important for parents to create the environment that's supportive to this curiosity. One of the parents mentioned the other day that they noticed that their kid likes to fish, and that's why they brought them on a fishing trip. So I think it's not a matter of instilling curiosity in kids because it's natural for them, it's intuitive. It's more of a matter of observing them and setting up the support system and the environment so that they can continue the curiosity. Because I mean, everyone likes to learn new things and be exposed to things all the time. And the problem with today's society, or rather curiosity in today's world, is that children of today are born with the internet connected to them. So there's actually too much information. So we as adults and as parents need to filter that information for them, because we have the experience of what's quote good or bad, but then guide them and support them in the curiosities that they do have naturally.
And that's a very tricky thing, actually, as a parent. How do you decide? Because we all are very different if you really think about it. So what interests me may not necessarily be what interests my children. What I deem as safe, there are certain things that we all should deem as safe and unsafe. Like, obviously we are not talking about letting them experiment with things that could be potentially harmful. But when we're looking at interest, when we're looking at things that people want to find out more about, there are certain things that we might not necessarily think that it's a good idea. So how do you sort of draw the line? Because it's extremely hard actually to make that distinction.
I think that's the key is that as long as it's not harmful to them, it's fine. Because I think one thing that's lacking with support systems for children is promoting their individualism and knowing your child. And actually, amongst your kids, even each child will be different. And sometimes parents, of course, with good intent, want to push a certain field. I know when I was young, even though I gave that anecdote about my mother supporting me, when it came time to apply for colleges, applying for an art school was not supported. So even though they love me and they support me and they support my creativity, they still felt a way about pushing me towards the art field, because of their concern in the fact that it may or may not become a fruitful career. Which obviously, in retrospect, I understand all of that, and it is a risk. However, if the student or child is pushed into a field that they do not enjoy, at the end of the day, maybe they'll do it 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, but it'll catch up to them, and they'll change or quit or change their whole career anyway. So I think it's important just to create the environment where you support the child in finding out who they are, finding out what they like, and finding out what their dreams are, and nurturing that, as long as, again, it's not harmful to them.
Yeah, and I suppose that goes back to the bonding that we were talking about yesterday. So I suppose the more we get to know our children and spend time with them and understand, perhaps either by observing or being actively involved in the different activities that they are doing, the more we really get to see where they're going with different ideas that they have, and then we can see, what sort of role we can play in that as well.
And I understand, life is busy and everyone's busy and everyone tries to parent, of course, the best they can, but it really is an investment. And giving them rules of what to do and what not to do is less investment than taking the time to sit with them and talk to them and understand them. But it's actually just necessary, because these kids today know a lot of things and they're a lot smarter and a lot more capable of understanding things than which is why a couple of years ago or decades, they would teach kids with the purple dancing dinosaur or some gimmick like this. But now everyone knows, or rather, it's changing. The trend is changing in the education industry, that you can teach kids about mathematics and branding and marketing, which is what I've done for some local schools in Malaysia, and they absorb it. They absorb the information, they take it, and they become productive with it. So I've seen children as young as 10 years old creating their own tea brands, for example, and selling the tea. And in 1 year, they made, I think, 1,200 USD from a tea that they developed. They created the logo, they did the marketing, everything. So I think the sooner you can expose them to skills that they can use in the world, the better. They're never too young. All the toys and games that are created out there are actually could be used for education. It doesn't have to be even playing with the dinosaur is educational, right? But it's all a matter of how we guide them while they're playing.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely very key here. I think it's really trying to have the conversations around all the different activities that the the children, whether they are teenagers or even younger, that they are going through, and how do they feel about it. So if they're just playing around with a smartphone, for example, even though you get really annoyed with them doing so, what is it that you can teach them, and what is it that they can get that is good, and how do you guide them towards the right direction to be asking the same questions. I remember once someone was telling me that when you're applying to universities, for example, you have to think about not just being good of the academics, but let's say that, I don't know, you're really passionate about something super random, like maybe something like movies or butterflies or whatever it is. You just have to have the passion and the drive to actually learn as much as possible around that area. And it doesn't matter if it seems insignificant to some people, because it's not the thing that everyone is talking about, but as long as you go very deep and you actually increase your knowledge and experience around that area. And I suppose that's something very hard for some parents to accept as well.
Well, that's the issue. That's the reason why I was called in as a resident artist to a lot of these businesses, because the businesses focused a lot on technology, and then after they built so much technology, they realized they needed content for the technology. Case in point with YouTube, which is why a lot of these kids today are making money creating businesses by being a YouTuber, because there's that platform. But the soul and the art and the creativity had to be put back into the business world. And so these kids today are actually encouraged to be creative, and there's actually jobs out there for these creatives. And so I think it's good that they had the platform to release their creativity in fun ways, because as we all know, well, businesses found out that a lot of the today's generation won't really do much unless it is fun. So the thinking has changed, the mentality has changed, the workforce has changed, and so us as adults who own the companies also have to change in order to get the right employees. So it's a different landscape.
And you mentioned that you're already working with certain schools and different bodies that are already doing all these sort of activities with the kids to sort of instill this element of curiosity and get them to think creatively. But what if you're a parent that you think that, look, I'm trying as much as I can at home to sort of get them interested in, books and reading and this and that, but then they go to school and this sort of curiosity is somewhat suppressed by, people telling them, no, you don't need to ask questions. You just listen and learn, and that's it. So what do you
I
say to that?
think, yeah, I think it's important that you and the school that they're attending is on the same page. And so even though that is out there, what you just said in regards to the thinking of the old school way of just sit there and listen. There are schools that are innovative, some of which I work with, like Dwi Mas in Malaysia, but a lot of innovative thinkers in Finland, let's say, a lot of the new changes in education are coming out of Finland. And slowly but surely, these techniques are spreading throughout the educational industry. And I know in Finland, they do new kinds of teaching with primary by mixing them up with college kids, and they actually mix up college and primary in the same classroom to discuss topics, which is kind of out there. It's out of the box, but again, there is a trend of thinking out of the box for education, not only because of COVID, but because everyone knows that this generation is receiving information differently. But COVID definitely pushed it over the edge where people are just now forced to think differently. And so COVID is kind of a blessing in that way. So not only do you have to learn by remote, but you also learn differently. So I think even though that situation is existing now, it is changing rapidly and quickly. And so I'm hoping by the end of this year to next year, the whole landscape would have changed. But again, there are already schools in Malaysia that do this sort of thing. So I think just look out for them, because it's very important that you put your kids in a school where you think they will benefit the most, so that when they go home, you can also reinforce that.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, Michael, I would also say that perhaps that's not really an option in terms of the location that you're at, or maybe you're really far away from those schools, or maybe financially you cannot really afford to send your kids there. So I would say though that like this day and age, especially this last year, has shown that there are so many things that we can do from the house actually. And I have a 6-year-old here at home, so I mean, he's still small, he's not a teenager, but there are so many resources out there that some are free, some you have to pay online, but there's so many different things that we can do. And I don't know, I seem to think that a lot we would like to let the teachers and the schools take care of our children's education and growth and all that. But at the same time, I think that we are the most vested people to actually, be the more participative ones and really figure it out on our own. So I think it really boils down to, how much effort we actually put into to have those discussions and look for these kind of resources as well to sort of guide them.
Exactly. It's kind of the point that I mentioned earlier, is that at the end of the day, it really is an investment on the parents' end. And no matter what school you put them in, you have to reinforce. And speaking about creative solutions, that's exactly it. The parents are put up to a test. They have to creatively solve how to reinforce this environment for their kids, with or without finance, putting them in the school or not. It really doesn't matter. There's always a way. Honestly, that's why I'm hired a lot as a consultant with businesses, because being creative doesn't mean drawing. It means being creative even with solutions. So if a company gives me an issue and a problem, my job is to think of a new creative way to solve the problem as opposed to the traditional ways. So thinking critically and creatively thinking is an asset to any company in any industry.
Going back to your personal journey, Michael, how has curiosity helped you along the way? How did it sort of help you?
I think it's the key to my success, because imagine I wasn't planning on going to art school. I ended up being a fashion designer. I wasn't planning on being a graphic designer, but that was my first role in this Fortune 500 company. And then from that first job as an assistant designer and graphic designer, like I said, I had to learn how to create cover sheets for fax machines when people used to fax, to postcards, to how to sign your email, to being a liaison between international distributors in the clothing line. Mitsubishi was the distributor for Japan, for example. And to be honest, at 19, I was sent over to Hong Kong to handle production, and I knew nothing. I was 19, out of school, and it was my first job, but they sent me to do a production run because, like I said, the company was run by 15 people. I was one of the 15, so it was very small. So they didn't have many employees to send. So they sent me, this kid, and I had to learn everything on the spot. But if I wasn't curious and I was scared and I wasn't confident, I wouldn't have gone. But to me, I've always been open to new experiences. I've always been open to learn new things. And even though I knew I didn't know what I was doing, I knew that if someone presented the problem to me, I can figure it out, figure something out. And if they were willing to send me, then they must have saw something in me as well. So to me, curiosity has always led me to my new opportunity. I mean, now from fashion design to creating several businesses, to being part of several businesses, and currently now I'm mainly consulting and talking to you with education. I've kind of just gone with where my curiosity has led me. So I think it's key.
All right. So let's say that you're a parent of teenagers. They may be curious about certain things, but maybe you're not really sure whether those are the things that they should be curious about, or maybe they're not curious at all, at least in your eyes. How would you go about nurturing curiosity in these kids as their parents?
I think this is one pitfall that parents have to be careful not to get into. I think you really have to understand your child so that you can help them understand themselves. And sometimes you won't understand because that's just the dynamics of teenagers and parents. But I think you just have to reinforce the fact that you support whatever decision that they have for themselves, as long as it's not harmful to them, because we won't always understand or be in touch with what the next generation is doing. That's always been the case with every generation. You know, they even had that song by Fresh Prince that parents just don't understand. So I think there's always a stage in life where kids feel disconnected to their parents. And that's why it's important and key that in the beginning years, you set up that bonding and that trust so that no matter if that stage comes, you still have the connection and you still have their ear.
Yeah, and that's absolutely critical. In fact, when we are talking about leadership development, Darren very briefly mentioned earlier, we have this framework that we call Science of Building Leaders, and we rely quite a bit on that because we actually took a lot of time to research, what are the different stages of leadership development at different stages of life, and we found that having a secure base is actually a very critical part of that as well, which feeds into perfectly here. So being a secure base, someone that they can rely on, they can always come back to for advice, they can feel safe to fail with, to express whatever troubles and issues they may have. That's definitely key in them trusting you and in them listening to you and exploring more from there.
I think it all comes down to communication. And when people, whether kids or adults, don't feel judged, they're more open to communicate. And so when you have that open line of communication, then you can solve anything, and I mean, to be honest, till this day, my parents think that being a fashion designer means I sketch all day and I doodle all day. They thought it was a fashion designer meant that I create comics, cartoons for comics all day. And so up to today, 25 years later, even creating a business where I employed them to work for me, they still don't understand what I do, but that's okay. The point is they support it and they're here for me, and that's all I needed.
All right. And so what if you have a child that you think that is not curious? Like they don't seem to be interested in anything. Like they seem to
I,
just float through life without really caring much
I,
about things.
like I said earlier, I think kids are very intuitively curious. So I don't think that's true. If they act like or seem like they're not interested, it's because they feel like they don't have the space to express their curiosity. That's what I think. So I think as long as you always show them that you're there and you support and you create that environment, sooner or later, uh, there'll be some discussions with you.
Yeah. So I would think it always comes back to exposure. How do we allow them the space and the opportunities to sort of find out more about a variety of topics, not just one or two that we deem suitable. And also, yeah, just being there for them and having those conversations, observing them, trying to understand more where they're coming from as well.
That's why I think COVID is kind of a blessing because again, everyone is forced to look otherwise and going on the internet and working with leaderonomics and platforms like this where you can share information without leaving the country. I think that's key. That's key to surviving in times like this and in the future because it's not going to change.
Okay. I think we're running out of time. Darren?
We have some time, but I think it's good that we use this time. Maybe we can direct some questions from
Sure.
the floor. So let's what we do is that I will read out some of the questions that we already have, and then we'll open up the floor to more questions from the audiences as well. All right.
Okay.
So the first question we have comes from Harsha. So Harsha asks, do you think the kids today are also less curious because they are more scared of failure or hard work? For example, diving into something and it is not working out well.
I think it's funny because again, it's a generational gap. So a lot of us old schoolers think that the new generation is lazy and they only want to do fun stuff. But I think it's different. I think they're more realistic with their landscape because in our time, you can work for a company for 40 years. You can work after 40 years, get a stipend every month, a retirement plan. You can get a Roth IRA. You can get your pension, etc. And it was worth working with that company 9 to 5, very hard, day to day, because at the end of the tunnel there was this bright golden pot of gold. But the kids today don't have that. And a lot of the companies close down all the time. And everything is for today, not tomorrow. Even in the fashion industry, fashion and music in particular changed a lot in the last decade. And I used to design per season, but when Forever 21 and Zara and these big companies came, everything is about weekend wear. So it's something that you would throwaway fashion is what they call it. So they would wear it on Friday and trash it Saturday and then buy new on Monday. That's how it was. So it ended up that these fashion companies had to design every week. So the whole system of fashion had to change. We don't even design by season anymore. In particular, even fashion shows, we can't even do shows anymore. Everything's virtual fashion shows. So everything changed. So I think the kids today, not that they're lazy, but they're just more aware and realistic of the landscape. So they don't really want to invest much if they know they're not going to get much. You know what I mean? So I think we have to show them that there are ways to still invest and make money, and it's worth it for them. I call it jaded, but they're kind of, looking at things because to be honest, the future is not bleak, but is not as sunny as before, let's say. I mean, this COVID thing really, after COVID, a lot of the students today are asking, even if I go to school now, what's going to happen if the work environment, doesn't even have jobs for me? What's the point of going to college? And there's some truth to that uncertainty because we don't know what's going to go on with this COVID, and we don't even know how long it's going to last. So I understand and sympathize and empathize from their point, what they're thinking. But all I have to say is that they have to just keep trying because things will change. And at the end of the day, they are the ones that are going to be the new society. So they can make the changes themselves for themselves ultimately.
Yeah, I sort of agree. I think the brief answer is no. I think generally generations think that the younger generations are worse than the ones before. So I'm a millennial. I say that for the younger ones and so on and so on. And I think some of the older people probably say that for us as well. So I think it's just one of those things that, you just forget how bad it was when you were there, sort of thing. I think it's just a different kind of curiosity now. So maybe when we were kids, it was more about, going outside, exploring, playing outside in the fields or whatever, looking for bugs and whatever it is that we used to do back when we were kids. Now it's more of depending where you grew up, by the way. But now it's more of, why is this show like this? How did they make this game like this? Why is it moving this way and all that? And it might sound very trivial and very, gadget related to parents, and it might really frustrate you because, it's not what you would think that they should be interested in, but maybe that's just the way that things are moving. Maybe that's where we're headed anyway. So I think it's just about embracing it and seeing how we can actually nurture it into something much bigger. And, how do we make it be a genuine interest that they'll look into a lot more deeply rather than just, superficially, and then we move on to the next one tomorrow and all that. So I think it's just a different kind of curiosity that we are observing.
I think we have to trust the kids in knowing their landscape more than us because it's their world. I mean, if my fashion design career inspirations were trivial to my parents, imagine how about a game designer or a toy designer, but these are the careers.
We have another question from Asmin. So he asks, there will be times where our kid is interested in something that we don't think he or she should be. Both of us could be wrong, but how do you bridge the gap?
So I think to me, very simple, even though I don't know the specific question, but I would say it really depends on the situation. So what is that thing that they're interested in? Is it something that is very harmful? And if it's something that we know that it will harm them, then of course we need to make a stance and, not let them go through with it. If it's something that it's not really that harmful, if it's not gonna, destroy their health or, life or whatever, it's maybe they might just, waste a couple of, weeks or months trying it out and seeing how it is. I would say just go with it, just let them explore. And then in the end, they'll figure out that this is not for them. But obviously that would include you observing and keeping a close eye and being there as well.
Yeah, same. I think exploration is key, and you have to allow that. Otherwise, especially during those rebellious years, I think they'll end up doing it more if you say no. So I think that the key is to support.
And also to add to that, because I experienced that with my son. My son is 6 and he'll come up with the craziest ideas, and he's like, I want to learn drums. I'm like, well, I'm not going to buy you a drum set because you're going to forget about it tomorrow. I'm not going to spend all the money. So it's really getting them to see your side of the story and giving them the rational explanation behind it as to why is it that you're not letting this happen. But maybe it's finding a middle ground. Can you get them to exploring it a different way before you actually buy the drum set, because it doesn't make sense to buy a drum set for a 6-year-old,
Right.
at least for me.
We have another question from the floor. So this is from Harsha. So she says, how do you explain to a teenager that a creative career can entail many different disciplines, not just art? My daughter is intent on being an artist, but is quite narrow-minded in her approach.
I can answer that because let's say fashion, for example. A lot of people love fashion, but let's say they quote don't know how to draw. First of all, the first company that I worked with, Carl Kanai, again, was $450 million. The owner did not draw. He hired us to draw. So you don't need to draw. And in addition to that, there are many facets and many careers and many jobs within the fashion industry. There's marketing, there's sales, there's production, there's customer service, there's a lot of things that don't even deal with actually sketching or drawing. And so I think you can get into the creative field without quote being creative, because a lot of people they call them merchandisers. They love fashion and they love to be in it, but they don't know how to draw and don't know how to sketch. So they end up putting the styles together like a stylist. So they put the outfits together, which is another job, which is also as important because that's the presentation and the sales. And without sales, there's no business.
Yeah, I suppose it's really helping them to see what the full extent of the different potential roles could be in that line, and see whether any of those areas might be a bit more suitable for them.
So we do have another question from the floor, and this one is from Rajesh. She says, in a world where kids are sucked into the world of gaming, curiosity seems to be something that seems to be lost. How do we engage them out of their world where they can become hostile when forced to leave their secure gaming world?
So it depends how far in we are, I guess. So I would say that I mean, this is something that we probably build on over many years, and it's not something that one day you just wake up and you say let's just do this. So whatever it is, whether they're already there and you need to sort of pull them back, you sort of need to do it gradually. Or if you just want to make sure that they don't really get to that stage, you also need to do it gradually. So what are the sort of ground rules that we set in a household that will sort of allow them to either like come back from it or not let them get there? So for example, you have small kids and you're looking at them like not being so sucked into this, and try to set boundaries, try to set rules as to how long they can actually use the gadgets that they have and all that, so that they don't get to that point. If you're looking at bringing them back, I suppose it's really trying to understand from there, and what is the fascination about, and try to understand where they're coming from and see how you can sort of skew their mindset to really see what it is that they are missing, and maybe make suggestions along the way to see how else they could be spending their time, and hopefully you can slowly sort of veer them off that side.
We do have another question from the floor. This is from Amelia that says, how do we shift the focus from studies and exams to other things?
So I think the two are very connected. Sorry, Mike, Michael, I just sort of jumped in. But so yeah, I think the two are very connected. So I think it really depends on where we place the importance from the beginning. And I think we live in a world that, you know, degrees might not mean as much as they did all this time going forward. I think especially this last year with COVID and everything. I don't know whether you've been following all the conversations about, you know, people complaining about ridiculous university fees, you know, still being there, even though no one is really going to on campus and all that. So I think we're slowly sort of moving away from it, and maybe faster now given the whole situation that we're in, and it seems to be prolonging anyway. So it's definitely important to make sure that we're not just focused on studies, because the other things that they do outside will give the additional social skills and sort of other kind of attitudes, mindsets that we really want them to develop in addition to the academics, because academics is definitely important. You definitely want them to have the methodical you know, effort of actually going through something and learning it very deeply, but at the same time it's not everything. So you as a parent will probably have to emphasize that, look, you sort of need both. I know you have to do well in your exams, but you need to figure a way to balance it, and maybe you need to help them to figure out how to balance it as well.
Yeah, the most recent news, I think it was 2 weeks ago, was a debate about whether or not they're going to get rid of the SATs. So yes, it's going to change, and I think less focus needs to be on tests as opposed to making the child more well-rounded for the future.
We have another question from the floor that says, do you think curiosity is innate or a learned behavior?
Same answer as before for myself. I think it's innate.
Yeah, it's definitely innate. So we've actually done the research that I mentioned earlier, the Science of Building Leaders framework. We've actually spoken to a lot of different people to see what they've gone through, and we've tried to understand, you know, what happens along the way. So there's different people that they've had experiences in their life that allowed them to nurture it, and we've had people that had experiences that sort of suppressed it along the way. If you look at curiosity on its own, it's an innate quality that we all have. We are all born. Like no one tells a 2-year-old, you know, why is the car white, and you know, why is the sun bright, and you know, all those why questions that they're asking. It's something that we're definitely born with. It's just how do we keep it going, and obviously, you know, change it along the way so that it's not so annoying and driving us mad.
If there's no further questions, right, I just want to thank both Michael and Eva for a very insightful session. I think you definitely gave a lot of great views today on the topic of curiosity per se. How do we nurture their curiosity in the right direction? I think that's the a good gauge, not just nurturing curiosity on the whole, because curiosity in a way can be good, both good and bad in a sense. It's just how we are going to nurture and direct it on the right part, or the best approach to be asking questions and being curious. So thank you so much, Michael and Eva, on that very insightful session. So I think at the end of the day, it comes down to encouragement and validation lah. At the end of the day, when you ask questions, I feel this is my own personal opinion. I think that, you know, as a kid, when I was a kid growing up, asking questions to my parents, a lot of time it's not that I don't want to ask. I just don't know how to be curious. I don't know what kind of questions to ask, and what would be the judgment in asking question. In schools nowadays, kids are not taught to ask questions. If you ask questions nowadays, everybody stares at you and wondering, why is this guy holding up the class? The teacher also wondering, I wasn't expecting any questions, but someone is asking me. So in Asian culture, we are not encouraged, the kids are not encouraged to ask questions. And so in camps, right, when we run camps and programs, when we ask kids questions, when we're trying to get kids to ask questions, right, to them the concept is so alien. They don't know how to ask. Whenever they ask a question, they're looking around at everyone else and fearing being judged by it. So I think it's very important that you talk about nurturing and how to do it. I think encouraging and validation is definitely a key aspect to that as well. Just a bit of a two pence I'm adding on to my thoughts on it based on the camp experience in dealing with youths lah. All right. So Eva, I will pass it over to you to just give a recap of the session.
Sure. Thanks, Darren. So just to do like a mini sort of review of sorts, I as I mentioned, we chose to speak about curiosity because we found that it's one of those qualities that it's something that everyone would like people to have, but it's something that is definitely lacking in adults, working adults today, and it's something that we found in our research that it's something that really needs to be cultivated from a very young age, and the younger you start, the better it is. And the reason for that, it's precisely because it's an innate quality that we all have, and if you don't sort of nurture it along the way from the beginning, it will sort of die off, and then it's a lot harder to sort of spark it back instead of just let it flow and grow consistently. And in Leaderonomics, we're looking at leadership development in a very holistic way of doing things, and youth team is looking at how do we start this journey of leadership development from a very young age. We are looking at the moment, we're starting from as young as 8. I believe that's the youngest that we're going in our programs from the youth team. We want to start even earlier than that one day. But at the same time, we also want to make sure that we're not just talking to the kids. And, there's so much that we can do with the kids in terms of actually bringing them for camps. Maybe they come for a week, maybe they come for a few days, and then they just go, maybe they join us next holiday and all that. But how do we make it something that is a lot more consistent? And there's two ways. Either we create a program that is a lot more consistent so that they can actually go through and they can sort of grow consistently week by week with us. And that's why we have in some schools that have allowed us to do so. We do have clubs that are running there as extracurricular activities, but we are also having this youth curriculum that we call Y52, which is the sponsor, I suppose, of this workshop here. And I'm going to share a little bit about it. But at the same time, we also wanted to reach out to the parents because we can talk to the teachers, and we do work with the teachers quite a bit, especially when we go to schools to run the different clubs and all that. At the same time, the parents are the ones that have the real vested interest in seeing their kids succeeding and potentially reaching their full potential. So and they're there along across the entire childhood. They can see the development and all that. So that's why we wanted to sort of have this session and bring you here. And I believe there will be subsequent sessions on different topics that we can invite you back for as well, in this kind of arrangement or something similar, that we can have discussions. We also have the chat, the WhatsApp chat that Andrea started. I think some of you are there, some of you may have opted not to. So the reason that chat was created as well was to make sure that the conversations can keep going. And I've seen a couple of you here have been giving suggestions to each other in the chat group. So the idea is to keep that going and building that network of support in some way between the parents that came here for the workshop as well. So do keep it up. And if you have any questions or any comments or any ideas that you wanted to share with the rest of the parents in the group, just post it on the WhatsApp. And I think if people are willing to stay in it, hopefully we can benefit from each other there. I wanted to share a little bit more about Y52 though. So Y52, as I mentioned, we basically built it around the science of building leaders, which is a framework that we've been researching for many years now. This is the basis of what we do at Leaderonomics, and we see this as a blueprint on what it takes to develop a person into a leader. So what are the different elements that we need to look at and develop at different stages of one's life so that they can sort of have a better chance, be more equipped to, fulfill their leadership potential. And leadership, we define it very broadly. So it's not just, being a CEO or, being a prime minister or whatever, but leadership in every sense of the word. So we've built it by focusing on the key areas that we need to build, especially during the teenage years, the foundational pieces that you see here in red. And Darren, if you move to the next slide. So we're basically looking at a 52-week long curriculum that we are taking youth through. So this is specifically built for teenagers, examples specifically for teenagers that they would relate to them more, they would find a lot more appropriate, a lot more suitable for their experiences. and in formats that they would also sort of appreciate more. So a lot of videos, a lot of visuals, infographics, a lot of color and all that. But the idea is to sort of walk them through all the different areas that we're looking at developing. And we're not just talking about skills here, we're also talking about character traits, building the right kind of mindsets, some skills, even things like identity formation, self-awareness, and your self-agency, your ability to be independent, relationship to competition and all that. Okay, so this is sort of I'm not sure whether you can see it now, but it's basically all the 52 topics that we cover over the 52 weeks. So this is available as a self-paced online curriculum that people can subscribe to. So it's essentially a subscription package, I suppose, that you sort of get a subscription for the year, and then you have access to the 52 weeks of learning that is pushed out to you on a weekly basis. And you can head over to Necole.app if you want to learn a bit more about it, and if you're interested about your kids. At the same time, you can also obviously check with me, check with Andrea as well, since you have our contact details. And we can definitely fill you in if you're more interested in finding out more. But the idea here is really, how do we provide a systematic development that the kids can actually have some kind of guidance as to all the different areas that they need to sort of start developing over the years. So with that, I would encourage you to take some time to think about everything that we've gone through today. We do have one more session, and we really hope to see you back for that. That's on Wednesday evening, and we'll definitely send a reminder for that as well. And yes, continue your conversations. If you haven't done the pledge from the other night with your teenagers, by all means, just spend a little bit of time if you have some time, if they're not sleeping after this, or you're not exhausted, or maybe tomorrow night, that would be a good break. But yes, just keep the conversations going, really, and hopefully over the next few days, we'll also share a few more resources with you, even after the Wednesday workshop, to help you along this journey and give you some ideas on different things that you can do from your side.
So just wanted to say thank you for everyone for being with us for the past 2 days, and we really hope that you enjoyed yourself. So we will see all of you on Wednesday, all right? Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good night ahead.